Good afternoon, everybody. So thank you so much for being a part of my channel. And if you could smash the like button, I'd really appreciate it. So today's message is going to be on some kind of intense stuff. So we're going to be talking about anger, bitterness, and forgiveness. So I just want to share that, all of us have a history of pain, of hurt, of things that didn't go the way that we had hoped for them to go. And whether some of these circumstances that, went on a negative slant, were at the result of just us being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or if there's really something a lot deeper to that. And I'm talking about like sexual abuse, rape, some very inhumane deeds that were done to you. In those types of circumstances, it seems, quote, human and natural that we would become angry, that we would become bitter, and that we would also probably take a stand that we'll never forgive that person for what they did to us, okay? So this is kind of what I wanted to attack. So let's start with Ephesians 4:31-32. So here we go. So if you want to follow in your Bible, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And then the second part of that, verse 32, and be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Now, again, I know we're talking about some serious, attacks that some of us have been under, and I am not minimizing any of the terror that you might have experienced. I myself have experienced several bouts of sexual assault and sexual abuse and rape and gang rape. So I know exactly what that feels like. I know how difficult it is to overcome those flashbacks, those nightmares, the reactionary kinds of feelings that erupt from time to time. I know I have been, fighting this. So let's talk about, number one, what is bitterness? So bitterness is the result of being rejected and also of raw fear. So, it's one thing to be like, oh, she's bitter. She's bitter about that. Okay. And yes, people may say that about people who have displayed an act of bitterness. But let's talk about what's really going on here. And this is where I really want to highlight, within ourselves, we have this body temple, and within ourselves, when we think and speak and act in certain ways, we then call on, we call on our attackers to continuously attack and torment us. I know that sounds weird, but just follow me here. So the root of bitterness is going to have different evil spirits that are assigned to that label, bitterness, okay? And that might include spirits of unforgiveness and rage and anger and violence and revenge and retaliation. And some people might even take it to the extreme of murder. So the point is, these evil thoughts and then these evil words that we speak, and then they become evil deeds, they become a pattern. And sometimes that root spirit that gets attached to us is about the act of whatever we went through is so tormentuous that it's like because we start to think these thoughts, it's like a door becomes open for these spirits to enter in and attach, okay? Now, in Hebrew, the word mara means to cause or make. And and like meaning to cause or make bitter. So rebelling is you're resisting or causing to provoke, you're being disobedient, and you're provoked because you're bitter. It's like a cycle that like one thought begets another thought, and then you kind of stay rooted in this thought of bitterness. Okay. So the bitterness is actually a result of the repressed anger. So for example, let's say that you had a serious inhumane act done to you, such as sexual assault, sexual abuse, violent beating, physical abuse. And as a result of those circumstances, which you survived, okay, you have this root of bitterness and anger, and you feel justified to have that because of what was done to you, okay? But what we're really dealing with is repressed anger. So, the repressed anger is actually what's causing us to be unforgiving and to choose to stay in that bitterness and anger, because we just can't imagine how could we forgive a person of such acts. Okay. So, our coping skills that we may have produced over time with repetition is we may have a way of reacting in anger. We may raise our voice. We may want to talk about and, just kind of rehash and loop in the horror that was done to us. And essentially the traditional psychotherapy route, a lot of times that's what it encourages. It encourages you to keep re-talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and to the point where you're like, enough, like I know what happened. It's not that I don't know what happened. So essentially that reacting and like re-talking about it over and over again is basically what keeps that bitterness to stay in your flesh. Okay. And then because it's staying in your flesh and you keep holding on to those thoughts of bitterness and anger and unforgiveness, then it's like what starts to show up in the body as like, tight joints or some type of tumorous type of things, and whether that's cancerous or not. The point is, like, the body at that point, because of all the repeated thoughts that you've put into the body, are now starting to manifest physical problems in the body. Okay. And so when we get something in our body that's physical, and I'm going to give you an example. So, right after I was raped in high school, and I was attending the Baltimore School for the Arts as a dance major, and I was just so distraught at the horror that had happened to me. And yet I'm in this, hand-picked, selected school that I've auditioned to stay in, and obviously I can't be, pregnant in this school. And so, and I was raped. And so therefore I had this abortion, not because I wanted to, but it was under the command of my parents, since I was a minor. And the point is that then my body was reacting against me and what was going on internally. And then really close to right after that happened, I had a tumor that was formed in the ball of my foot. And then I had foot surgery, and it's like, then I'm out. I can't dance for that season again because my body was retaliating against itself for the thoughts of anger and bitterness and unforgiveness that I was putting into, from me being angry at the perpetrators, me being angry at my parents for forcing me into a decision, me being angry that I didn't have a choice. So there were so many things going on. Okay. Now the point is, as an adult, okay, and through all the different things that I went through in terms of going to therapy and trying out all these different types of modalities, and I mean, cognitive behavior modification and regression therapy, and I could go on and on, all the different types of things that I tried. But the reality is, when I truly surrendered, and I mean like a real surrender to the God of Israel, I was on my knees, okay, and I surrendered to Jesus at the cross, and I was like, Jesus, help me, like I can't do this by myself. Now, again, like I said, it's a journey, and God is so gracious and merciful and patient with us that he may still allow us to process these emotions and these horrendous, inhumane acts that were done to us through a vehicle of, say, therapy, or through a vehicle of, say, coaching, because some of this stuff is really hard to overcome. Okay. But at the same time, like I was including Jesus in this process, and I was turning over to him and saying, God, please take this away from me. And the thing is that the best way to do this is by prayer and fasting. Now, you might think, well, why? Like, why does it have to get to that level? Because the deep rootedness of these things really need to be dealt with at that level, because they run so deep. So before we talk about the actual fasting part, let's talk about anger in particular. So anger is a spirit that stems from bitterness. So it's like, first is like the little seed of bitterness, and you're like irritated and agitated, and it's like a little anger, right? But then it grows, and anger can become this really like horrendous, large demon, okay? And unforgiveness of the perpetrators that did us harm, okay? That unforgiveness can continue to have an open door so that other angry spirits can come enter in, because we're not aware that we've even opened the door, and we continue to stay stuck in our thoughts of bitterness and anger and unforgiveness. And so some of the things that we might be like looping in our mind about are the examples of when someone like really hurt us, rejected us, abandoned us. Like abandonment is huge in this, feeling repeatedly disappointed, the actual abuses, the actual rapes, the actual molestations, and just the idea that we've been taken advantage of, that we've been lied to, that we've been, just maliciously talked about, manipulated. It's just like a feeling of, why can't I belong? Why does this have to happen to me? How come other children who are pretty, or handsome, why did it not happen to them? Why did it have to happen to me? And so there's this whole thing of, rejection, and that rejection again is stemming with all these additional layers of hurt and fear and unforgiveness and bitterness. So basically what I'm getting at is all of this stacks up. Okay. So you've got the spirit of bitterness, you've got the spirit of anger, you've got the spirit of unforgiveness. And these three spirits, with all the other things that I've named so far, they're all like collecting all these different entities and spirits, and they're all grouping together to get a really, tight stronghold on you. They're creating a root in you. Okay. And it's like, from all that, that's what gives us this, like, it also brings in this rebelliousness within us, that we get to the point where we're getting so self-righteous, because it's like we can't trust anyone for the horrendous things that have been done to us. And we don't want other people to go through the horribleness that we've gone through. And so then we want to take a stand and be like, those people over there, those people are really bad. Like, avoid those people, and in that realm, for me and what I've been through, I would be like, avoid those drug dealers and drug addicts, and, they're only going to betray you. And You're going to have massive loss and financial loss and all of their lies and manipulation and addiction. Their addiction is just so, it's going to break you up. It's going to tear you apart. And, you know, the narcissists and all their evil thoughts and words and deeds, and you're going to be plagued with, you know, people that are so untrustworthy, and they're going to be involved in infidelity and theft, and they're going to destroy your life. And, you know, you're just going to feel depleted and ruined and like, you know. And the point is, in truth, okay, and I really want you to hear this, in truth, all of that happened to me. Okay? It did. Uncle Jim, the, you know, pedophile that abused me when I was a child, okay, yes, he was part of my extended family. And you know what? Nobody believed me. Everybody wanted to pretend that Uncle Jim was this great guy. And the reality is, he had a dark side. Nobody wants to admit what he did to me and all of the other children that he tormented. Okay? And the point is, was I angry? Yes, I was angry. Did I have a right to feel betrayed and that my body was taken advantage of without my permission? Yes, of course. But here's the thing, okay? In that moment, the Lord Jesus in his radiant form came to me in that act of her heinous, inhumane act as a child, okay? And because of that, I knew and I had the faith that Jesus was there with me in the pain, in the horribleness, and he calmed me down. Now, I can't really, you know, words are so limiting to explain what happened to me, but it's like I was in my body, but I was out of my body hovering, and Jesus was with me, calming me down with other angels surrounding me and telling me that this too shall pass, and you will move beyond this, and you will use this experience to help others. Now, as a 3-year-old, do you think I understood the impact of that? Of course I didn't. Okay? But I knew that as children talk about, quote, imaginary friends, Jesus was not imaginary for me. He was real. Okay? He was real. So I had a faith and a trust in Jesus as a child, okay? And I couldn't, you know, always explain it in great words because I was so young. But later on, I was, I'm going to say somewhere between the age 7 and 12. We lived out in the country during that time. And in the middle of the night, I would get woken up, I don't know, like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. I would climb out my window and I would go into the garden and I'd get on my knees and I'd pray to the Lord. I was like just a little kid, you know, and he would show me things and tell me things. And, you know, it would be, you know, things of then, of that time, and things of what would happen in the future. And again, I didn't understand everything. I was a child. But I remembered, and I journaled it, and I remembered it, and I continued to listen to the Lord as best as I could. And then I would be in school, and at the time, I was in Catholic school. And in Catholic school, I would, you know, just have this, you know, gut intuition, like, raise your hand to go to the bathroom at that exact moment, and I would obey, I would listen, and I get the hall pass, and I go get the permission to go to the bathroom. And in that exact moment, when I was in the bathroom, you know, I walk in and there's another girl that's being brutally raped by the janitor. And again, scripture just comes on my mouth, and I call out things about this man that I know nothing about this man whatsoever. But I started to tell this man what he was doing to himself, and he just pulled his pants up, left the room, and then I went to comfort the little girl. So what I'm getting at is, I can't explain these things that the Lord asked me to do. I can only tell you that they happened, okay? And that they changed me as a person because of these things that logically in my mind, it made no sense, okay? Now, later, as I was raped as a teenager. I was raped by my best friend. And that best friend, you know, I thought the world of him. I thought he was amazing. And he was like a pro skateboarder athlete type of guy. And I thought he was cool as ever. But the reality was he had his own issues and his own demons. And when he raped me at age 15, I did not give him permission. I might have liked him as my friend, but that didn't mean that I was giving up my body for him to do the things he wanted to do, because in my mind, I wanted to preserve myself for marriage. That's what I wanted. But the point is that he raped me, okay? And it resulted in a pregnancy. And as a result of the pregnancy, I was forced by my family to have an abortion. And again, that messed with my head. And I share this story for you to understand that through all this, okay, yes, these were difficult circumstances. Yes, these were things that I was angry at Uncle Jim. I was angry at this guy, Mark. I was angry at the way that that impacted my life and my passion and zest for life, because I became bitter, I became angry, and I wanted to be in a place of unforgiveness. Okay. And the point is, I may have spent many years trying to understand why this happened to me, and it just to accept the fact that it did, because, you know, some of these things are hard to grasp. But let me move on to the next milestone, just so you get the impact. So later I'm in college, and I go to this dance party at a fraternity, and I was there with some of my girlfriends, and somehow at some point, some guy slipped something in my Coca-Cola. Yes, I was not drinking, because that was not my thing. Somebody slipped something in my Coca-Cola, and as a result, I was then escorted into some room, handcuffed, and beaten and gang raped for hours, okay? And in that horribleness of what I went through, okay? And when it was all done, and they were all like laughing and, let's go get some food, it's like I'm left in the room by myself, still handcuffed, okay? And I'm like, Lord, I know you're there with me, because you're always here with me. And I'm like, please undo these handcuffs and get me to safety. And boom, the handcuffs just unlocked, and I crawled out of there to my car, and I got to the health clinic, and I got the help that I needed. So what I'm getting at is that I can't always understand why there are people out there that want to torment other people. I don't understand that. But again, in that moment, that health clinic told me, don't worry about it. Just forget about this. You'll never be able to win against this fraternity, because this fraternity has so much financial backing, and you're just going to have to put this behind you. And again, like, that is not something that's easy to forget. The images of all of those people's faces that I don't even know their names that go along with their faces, and the inhumane acts that they made me do in that moment, and the pain that they thrust into my body, and the nastiness and the cursing that went on in that whole thing, in that whole event. And the point is that I'm not going to sit here and say or minimize what they did, because what they did was evil, wicked, and inhumane. And again, during that time of trying to get beyond this, while I'm trying to focus on my future of being a professional dancer and being a communicator in terms of public speaking, etc., like, I didn't even have a voice, okay? I was so tormented by what had happened to me that my entire zest and joy for life, it was like, it was pushed down under, because what those boys did to me, what those young men did to me, it changed my daily living, because I would have nightmares. I would have flashbacks. I would have, I'd be walking somewhere and a smell of whatever that cologne was. And it's like, I wanted to like bash a wall, So again, all of this was unrepressed bitterness, anger, and unforgiveness to these people. Okay. And the point is that, again, I am in no way during this session trying to minimize the horribleness that any of these boys or men did to me. I will never agree with what they did to me. I will never accept that what they did to me was quote good. It was not good. It was evil. Okay. Now, come into the part of forgiveness. Okay. So Genesis 50:17, I will go to my brother and ask that he forgive me of my trespasses against him. And, like, I read that and I'd be like, how can I forgive these people for what they did to me? Like, how? Like, and so I would just be like, Lord, you know how hurt and angry I am about this. Please take this away from me. And that might have been my prayer at the time. And it would just keep evolving. And I just keep saying, Lord, help me to find peace within myself. Help me to find a way that one day I will forgive these people and what they did to me. Now, sometimes when people have had atrocious things such as sexual abuse and rape done to them, they want to create a plan of revenge. Some people take it to the extreme and they want to plot out, evil and wicked plans against these people. And that is one thing that the Lord, in my understanding and the conversations that I had with God, he kept telling me, the vengeance is mine. Okay. And so because I really heard him when he said that, I did not choose that path of vengeance. I just was like, okay, Lord, like, just please help me get to a place of forgiveness with people. So I never went after any of these people. And the attempts that I did inquire about in terms of legally what I could do, because of the circumstances, and especially with the fraternity and all the people's names that I didn't know their names or anything. The point is, it's like, it makes it so much more difficult to build a case when you don't have all the facts. So again, I was, reminded by the Lord that he sees everything, he hears everything, and he will deal with all of these people. Okay. So let's go to the next one, which is 1 Kings 8:50. Forgive me of my sins and have compassion upon me. Now, my sins of bitterness, anger, and unforgiveness have, trailed with me for many years. And it's something that I still work on daily to turn it over and surrender it. Because when these flashbacks happen, with, like I said, just a smell or a look of somebody that looks similar to that other person, it's like, I need to get away and get alone, because I don't want my anger to come out on anybody else. I don't. As I forgive others, Lord, I pray that you will forgive me. Matthew 6:12. All right. I will forgive any person with whom I ought, so that when I stand praying, my Father in heaven will forgive me also. Mark 11:25. Now, I know this whole thing of forgive others so that God can forgive you. And I'm just saying to you, I'm not sitting here and I am not saying that it is easy. For me, it is not easy. Unforgiveness has been by far the hardest thing for me to let go of. And it has been a long time in coming, many years of trying to move beyond all these feelings of angerness and bitterness, anger, and unforgiveness. Now, here's my point. I did things in a, uh, therapy type of journaling way, okay? And that is the path that I did, up to a certain point. And then, when you get into, the Bible and you take it to God in the Word, okay? And then you find some of the verses that relate to bitterness and anger and unforgiveness, doing a topical search, okay? That, if you just read it one time and you're like, I did it. Like, I checked it off my list. I did it. No, like, you need to like marinate in it. Like, really let these phrases, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be ye kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake has forgiven you. I mean, just that alone, Ephesians 4, 31, 32, like that one verse in and of itself, may take me a lifetime to really get, okay? And like I said, when someone is traumatized and abused to the level that I have been abused, I need even more time in these scriptures to really let them sink and to be able to unhook all of those other spirits that I may have let into myself willingly, knowingly, or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously. Because again, in the act of someone thrusting into you without your permission, there's a doorway open right there, vaginally, because of what someone did to me. Okay. And that can be, and then the doorway in our mind of all the evil and the bitterness and the anger and the unforgiveness, that we can have a doorway in our mind, and you combine that together, and then these evil spirits can have a stronghold over you. Okay. So the caution is, number one, to pay attention. Number two, to become aware, and then to get into the Word, find the scriptures that relate to bitterness, anger, unforgiveness. And I'm also going to encourage that you find some outlet to help you with this repressed anger. And whether you get a punching bag or go to the gym and punch, or, whether you scream out in the middle of a desert or whatever, like sometimes we need to just get these, sensations out of the body because of what has been done to us. And you may have to be a little creative about that. But again, the vengeance is the Lord's. Do not take it out on anybody else. God will handle all these people that have done all this harm to you. Rest assured, God has a plan. He's not going to forget what they did to you, and they will pay the price eventually. So what I'm getting at is, again, put your attention and your focus on the Lord. Put your attention and focus on the graciousness and the mercy that the Lord has had for you, and that you are a survivor, you are an overcomer, and that despite your past and what has been done to you as far as trauma and abuse, that there is a straight and narrow pathway for you. Grab your Bible, start to understand how to deal with these deep-rooted feelings so that they can become unhooked, and so that you can do this through prayer on the Word. And then the last thing is fasting. Now, as a yoga teacher, and I did this for many years, and as a health coach, mostly in raw and vegan and vegetarian, focus, I have spent many years doing different detoxes and body cleanses and that sort of thing, and like fasting on lemonade and water or just green juices. And all I'm saying is, when you do a fast, okay, the first 3 days are generally the most difficult, because you've been accustomed to eating food, and then you are, pulling away from the food, and your body's going to go through the headaches and the withdrawal and that sort of thing. But after day 3, it does get to be easier. And whether you do a 3-day fast, a 7-day fast, a 10-day fast, a 30-day fast, a 40-day fast, generally speaking, I stick to, 1 day to 40 days. That's like my maximum. And if you look at Jesus, before he went out to the desert, while he was in the desert, he was practicing a 40-day fast. Now, when Jesus was in the desert doing this 40-day fast, he was doing no water and no food. That is by far, dry fasting is by far the hardest type of fast of them all. Okay. And so what I'm getting at is these horrible evil spirits and demonic strongholds that you may be dealing with consciously or unconsciously from the result of sexual abuse, rape, gang rape, inhumane acts, okay, physical violence, okay. These types of strongholds of the bitterness, anger, and unforgiveness, they may need serious fasting in order to unhook all of those strongholds. And it may be over a period of, a longer period of time. I can tell you, you're not going to accomplish this in a 1-day fast. I mean, this is more of like a 30-day, 40-day fast to really conquer these types of issues. Okay. So, again, consult with a professional. You want to document things, you want to track things so that you're doing this safely. And again, you want to be in the Bible. You want to be in the Word. You want to be really focused on a spiritual foundation with the Word of God. And as you fight the battle in the spiritual with the Word of God, and then you're repressing yourself from the satisfaction of having, solid food and drink, in the sense of pleasurable things that you like, then what's going to happen is your body is going to go through the detox and the withdrawal. And as your body is going through that process, these spirits that have had their hold on you, they're going to, they're going to have to let go. And it is by repetition and consistency that you are going to see the results. Now, am I an absolute expert on all of this? No. I have expertise, but Jesus is the ultimate healer, and it is in Jesus's timing of you really dealing with the anger, the bitterness, and the unforgiveness. And it may be a process that you have to repeat multiple times until you get the results that are satisfactory. Now, I will also caution you that if you surround yourself with people who themselves display visual traits, that are obvious of bitterness, anger, and unforgiveness, then I think that it's going to be triggering for you. It's going to make your time of, doing your work to move through the layers of attachments of these evil entities attached to your body temple more difficult if you are hanging around people that are actively in the sin of bitterness, anger, and unforgiveness. So, you are going to need to pull away, set yourself apart, go into your cave, be alone, and really deal with this. Now, if you choose to do, quote, a group fasting experience, I'm more than happy to, lead you in that, in the sense of this is what you need to do, and guide you in some encouraging things of what you can do and what to avoid and that sort of thing to make your fasting experience more, tolerable. However, please understand, this is not for the faint-hearted. This is serious business. This is difficult to master, and it will require some serious discipline. So if that is something that you're interested in, please let me know in the comments and I will send you the additional information. So this video is just a heads up, and this is what I've been through, and maybe you've been through it, and prayer and fasting is a way to handle it. And yes, I can help you and lead you and guide you in it if you would like to be guided. However, like I said, ultimately, you have to take 100% responsibility for your emotions, for your thoughts, words, and deeds, and your character. And ultimately, it's up to you whether or not you're going to do the work that's necessary to move through it. And you really need Jesus at the center. You need to have that insight, understanding, and commitment that Jesus, Yeshua, the Christ, his blood and atonement at the cross is the reason for everything. And he is the true and ultimate healer that will allow you to be moved through and transformed through this process. So I hope that helps everybody. Have a good day.